Hey friends! A year ago, my husband and I built our own little free library, something I had been dreaming of for ages, and put it out on our front lawn. And basically, since I dropped that video, y'all have been asking for an update. How's it going? Are people using the little free library? How am I finding maintaining it? All the details. So I thought it'd be fun to give you a 1-year update of the little free library. How did it hold up through our negative 40 degrees Celsius winter? We'll get there. Whether it's being used or not, how it's going in general, and I'm really excited to share. So I'm splitting this video into 2 parts. Part 1 is going to be answering all of your questions, giving you that 1-year update, and then part 2 is going to be giving my little free library a bit of a refresh for year 2, clear it out, clean it up, curate the collection I want to put back in there, and maybe a couple other little fun extra things. I don't want to give it away too soon. So hopefully you'll enjoy this video. This is for all of you who have been asking me since basically 2 weeks after I dropped the initial video for an update. This is your update, and I hope you enjoy it. If you missed the first video, I'll link it in the description box so you can watch that one first. You can see the whole process of building the little free library and just my huge amount of excitement for fulfilling a lifelong dream of having my own little free library. Before I get into the update, I want to thank this video's sponsor, Notion, and y'all know, if you've been here for any amount of time, that I love Notion with my whole heart. I'm obsessed. I am constantly finding new ways to incorporate it into my life, and I don't regret it for an instant. But today, I wanted to highlight one of Notion's newest features, Notion Sites, the easiest way to share your ideas with the world. Whether it's your portfolio, a travel blog, an investor's pitch, anything your mind can come up with, Notion Sites is the perfect way to get your ideas out there for the world to see. As someone who made my first website when I was around 9 years old, and let me tell you, making websites was a whole different beast in the 90s, I so appreciate how simple, easy, and intuitive Notion Sites is to build your own website and get it out publicly online. You can get your website up in literal minutes using Notion's building blocks and web editor. Notion Sites also includes everything you need to manage your website. It's really an all-in-one solution. They take all the complicated and confusing aspects out of building a website so you can really focus on sharing what you're passionate about with your community. You can claim up to 5 Notion domains or connect your own custom domain, and you get all the web management tools that you would expect, like the ability to customize your site's SEO, to see your Google Analytics, and a site settings tab. I, of course, use Notion for basically every aspect of my life, but I had a really fun time using Notion Sites for the first time to share my reading tracker with my patrons. It was so easy to publish my pages to my own Notion site, and it's been really simple to manage it, maintain it over time, go in and make changes and have them automatically update to the live version of the site. It's just as easy to use Notion Sites as it is to use Notion itself. It really is incredibly intuitive and so flexible so it can meet a wide range of needs. Notion Sites also is going to save you a lot of money. We all know running a website can be costly, but you can create your own unlimited Notion Sites for free or pay the low price of $12 a month to get every single premium feature. Click the link in my description box to try Notion Sites today. I promise you it's even easier than I'm making it seem right now. You can have your own website up and running in no time flat. Thank you so much to Notion for sponsoring this video, and now, without further ado, let me talk about my experience in my first full year with my very own little free library. I asked y'all on Instagram to leave me your questions, so I'm going to do my best to get through all of those questions, but I'm also just going to do a little bit of a story time and share my experience this year. I'm not going to rehash all the reasons why I wanted a little free library. You can check out the first video if you want to hear me talk about that, but I will just say I was very, very excited to have a little free library, and I definitely spent the first several weeks trying to spy on people who were using it, not in a creepy way, but just in a, if I noticed someone stopping to look, I had to stop what I was doing and just observe and see if they took a book and just notice who was stopping. And I was really excited to see people of all ages taking a look. And pretty much every time I went out to check, which was on a daily basis for the first at least month, books had been taken away and new books had been put in, which was something I was honestly really worried about. I did not know if people would use it at all in the first place, but if they did use it, I didn't know if people would put books back in as much as they took them, and I was a bit worried that after a couple weeks it would just be empty. But I've actually had a really good experience where I would say people put more books in than they take out on average, and my little free library is always stuffed full of books, and the selection is constantly changing. It really feels like people are actively using it, which makes my heart so happy. And every couple weeks I'll go out there and I'll just pull out some books to make sure there's enough room so that people can properly flip through the options, really browse the selection without having piles that are precariously stuffed in there about to fall as soon as they open the door. But honestly, I feel really excited about the fact that it has been so full so often, to the point where I do have to pretty frequently clear it out a little bit. That is more than I could have asked for, honestly, to see that people are really enjoying the library, but not just taking from it, they're also giving, and that feels pretty awesome. I did also realize pretty shortly after I shared that video that I was mistaken as to how few little free libraries were actually in my town. There are only 2 other libraries on the actual official map along with my own, but there are actually another at least 10 little free libraries around my town. They're just not official. They didn't buy the little official plaque that gives you a charter number and allows you to add yourself to the app. So I was very pleasantly surprised to discover there actually is a pretty vibrant community of little free library lovers and users in my town. And I was also very excited to see my own little free library being shared in a bunch of Facebook groups, people sharing that they spotted a new little free library, and people being excited to add a new one to the list. So it was really fun to see that, and it's been really nice to realize how big of a reading community and a book loving community there is here, which I wasn't sure about, honestly, because like I mentioned in my first video, we have a library, but it's quite tiny. Every time I've gone, there's maybe been one other person there. We have 0 independent bookshops. We have 1 little chain bookshop, but it's one of those tiny little almost closets in a mall. It's so small. I was just under the impression that reading was not necessarily high on the priority list of the populace here because it just really wasn't represented in what was available, but it does seem like a lot of people are loving having a little free library here and grabbing the variety of books that I've put out there. And I've received a pretty wide array of books back into my little free library and donations. So that's been really interesting too, kind of observing what the prevailing taste is. Oh, this is such a good question. What's your favorite book you've seen in the library? You know what? I don't know if I've seen anyone put a book in the library that I have read before, outside of the books that I put in there that I had previously read, but I did get a huge bin of donations from a mysterious, anonymous, generous neighbor, and the bin had many, many different Stephen King novels, which I was pretty excited about because I've been meaning to read more Stephen King, so I am planning on reading a couple of those before I put them in the little free library. Maybe those are my favorite, and just that person in general is my favorite for donating so many books to the little free library. And that's actually one of the things I'm going to do in the second half of this video. I'm going to go through that whole bin and show you all the books that were donated in that one huge go and sort of select a number of them to put in the little free library as part of my curation for this little refresh I'm doing. Also, let me know in the comments if you would want to see a reading vlog where I read a selection of books that were donated to my little free library, because I feel like that could be kind of fun. Let me know. Another great question, because I do live in Canada and our winters where I am are pretty intense. We get our first snow usually in October or November and have snow all the way through until at least May, and we get temperatures down to -40 degrees Celsius. And on top of that, this spring we had this year was the rainiest spring we have experienced since we moved out here to the prairies. Usually it's pretty dry, but this spring was just constant rain all day, every day for literal months on end. I will say the little free library suffered a little bit from, I think, more so the rain than the winter. The books, though, have been fine. Even after weeks straight of rain, the books inside have been dry. But I will say the Little Free Library, specifically the roof, I think probably the combination of having so much snow on it for the whole winter, I probably should have thought about that and cleared the snow off regularly, but honestly, it didn't occur to me. Freezing and thawing through the beginning of spring, and then, like I said, months of rain, the roof has started to sort of buckle and peel up a little bit. I think that our solution for the roof of using bed liner, like truck bed liner, was a good idea, but I don't think that the wood we used for the actual roof was the right base for that technique. So if we have time to get around to it in this video, part 2 of this is going to be crafting a new roof for the Little Free Library that hopefully will hold up a little better through our next winter and spring. Again, the books have been fine. The roof has done its job in that it kept the books safe from the snow and the rain, but the roof itself is looking a little rough. If we don't get around to it for this video, it is something that's going to be done before our first snow this year, because it definitely needs to get done. But yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about, because a lot of people brought this up in the comments of the first video, was whether people were using the little library cards I was putting in the books or not, and sort of people bringing up the fact that Little Free Libraries are not necessarily meant to be used like a regular library where people bring them back to the same Little Free Library. You're supposed to be able to bring them back to any Little Free Library. And I guess I didn't say that in the video, but I do know that that's how they work. I honestly didn't mind if people brought the books back to a different Little Free Library and, someone using that other one could also use the little library card. I just thought it would be cool for people borrowing a book from a Little Free Library to see the names of other people who had read the book, no matter where the book ends up. But I understand why people brought it up, because I guess it seemed like I was expecting people to bring the books back to my specific Little Free Library every time, which I'm not. Although I will say I have been a little sad to not really see many of the books that I initially put in returned back. I think once or twice I've noticed one of the books I put in there, like the Anne of Green Gables copy I purchased, that one was taken and returned at least twice. But most of the books I put in there, whether they were my book that I read and then decided to put in there, or if I purchased it specifically for the Little Free Library, were not returned to my Little Free Library. So I honestly don't know. I don't know if the people who took those books home just ended up keeping them, or if they put them in a different Little Free Library in our town or passed them on to a friend. I have no way of knowing, but it does make me a little sad, because as much as I knew going into it that I wouldn't necessarily see all the books back, I was a little excited to see the books come back and see the names of people who had read them. That would have brought me joy, and it has been a little disappointing that I haven't had that opportunity. I do really hope that people are passing those books on, whether they're just giving them to friends or family to read, or putting them in another Little Free Library around town, or maybe somewhere else if they're traveling. I do hope people aren't just keeping the books at home. And obviously I can't force anyone to bring the books back, but my hope and my intention, especially with the books that I have specifically purchased to put in there, is that, me providing that book for free to the public means that a bunch of people can read a book that I love that otherwise might not have come across it. And if one person is taking it home, reading it, and then just keeping it on their bookshelf, then all the other people who might have been interested are now not going to come across it. So I don't know. I feel kind of mixed. Like I said, I've been really lucky with people donating books in excess to what they're borrowing, but I will say that the quality of the books that are being donated are, in my mind, lower than the quality of the books that I have been providing. It does sometimes feel like people are just getting rid of books that they don't want anymore, that are not necessarily of interest to other people, including, outdated phrase books and Bibles and little business books from the 1980s. Again, not super relevant probably today to anyone else, but there have also been donations of newer releases and bestsellers and classics, so it's not all bad by any means. But yeah, I am a little sad that I haven't seen a few more of the books that I initially stocked it with coming back. I'm hoping that I will eventually see some of them come back through the little free library, even if it's, years down the line and they've sort of made the rounds around town and eventually made their way back. But let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts or feelings about that, whether you have your own little free library or you just have used them. But especially if you have your own, how do you deal with the disappointment, I guess, of not seeing the books that you put in there come back? I will say that I'm not regularly pulling everything out and really curating what goes back in. I am, for the most part, just pulling out a couple things if they feel like they're just taking up space and won't really be of interest, and occasionally popping in some new things that I think people might want to read. But it's more of a haphazard when I think about it. Every couple weeks, every month or so, I will pop out there and take a look, take stock of the situation and shuffle things around a little bit, tidy it up. I do work from home, so I'm not passing it every single day on my way to work. And we also have a giant bush that it's in front of, which looks nice. I like the bush. It's a nice bush, but it's also a big enough bush that I actually can't see the little free library from the house unless I'm on the top floor, sort of looking down on it. So I must admit, I do regularly forget that it exists. Which is why I check on it every couple weeks or once a month, because out of sight, out of mind, and I forget that it's there. I've also had a lot of questions over this past year about whether I am putting the library cards and the little sort of summary page in every single book that is in the little free library. And the answer is that up till today, I have only been doing those in the books that I personally am putting in. So books that I have purchased or that are from my collection, I'm doing those things. But for books that are donated, I have not been doing that just because I feel weird about doing it for books that are donated, even though I know they are being donated. So I could do that. It's not like I'm defacing the book or anything, but I don't know. I have felt conflicted about that. So I've only been doing it in the books that I personally have purchased. I did get this though, which I think I might use even on donations. I can't remember if I mentioned this in the initial video because I remember being disappointed. I ordered it at least a month, I think, before I published that video. And I think it came in the mail 2 days after I'd published the video, which was very disappointing. But I ordered one of these paper embossers that has a custom design for, well, not totally custom, but I sort of picked what I wanted the design to be for my little free library. So I'm going to be using this on sort of one of the first couple pages of any of the books that go in there, including the donated books, just as a deterrent to anyone who might try to sell the books. Because again, it's not my favorite to think about people taking them home and then just keeping them on their own shelf and not continuing to share the love. But I don't mind the idea of that nearly as much as I mind the idea of people taking, especially the new books that I've purchased to put in there, and then just immediately turning around and reselling them, because that is very much not the purpose. So I have been using this for every book I put into the library, whether it is a donated book or one of my own books. I'm sure there are some books that are donated that get borrowed again before I even notice them and am able to stamp them, but I have been trying to use this. And I just think the design is so cute. It doesn't have anything specific to my little free library in that I don't have my name in it or the name of the little free library. I also don't have the charter number of my little free library on the stamp. It just says from the little free library, but hopefully that's enough that people know where it came from and can return it to a little free library, even if it's not mine. I've also had a lot of questions about what trends I've noticed in terms of demographic of who's using the little free library and also which books seem to be borrowed the most. It does seem like there is a pretty good mix of genres, both because I sort of made sure to put in a variety of genres and I read pretty widely, so that was kind of what I had on hand. But also the donations I'm receiving are also a range. I would say that mysteries, thrillers, and contemporary fiction are probably the most common genres that are donated to the library, but it does seem like pretty much any kind of book I put in the library ends up being borrowed at some point, whether it's fantasy or historical fiction, or I guess I haven't really put much horror in there, but classics or children's fiction, it all seems to be borrowed. And in terms of the demographic, I have noticed people of all ages. I have seen little kids who struggle to reach trying to go through the Little Free Library, which makes me feel kind of bad, honestly. And I think because I'm a taller human, it didn't really occur to me that small children might also want to go into the Little Free Library. But I have seen some people, walking with their kids, and they help their kids, like hold their kids up so that their child can look through the books, or they pull some books out for their kid to see. And pretty consistently, there have been at least a couple children's books in there, which has been really nice. But I've also seen older kids, teenagers, young adults stopping. I've had delivery people who are bringing our mail or our packages to our house, even food delivery people. I've seen them pause and go through the Little Free Library and grab something to take home. And also older people too. We have quite a few retirees in our neighborhood. This is sort of an older, more established neighborhood. So I've also seen my older neighbors that are, closer to my parents' age perusing the selection as well. So it's been really cool to see, honestly. I think the donations are probably mostly coming from our older neighbors, which makes sense. And I think the books are being mostly borrowed by, I would say, sort of my age, early 30s and younger. It's interesting. And I feel like it's kind of my job as the Little Free Librarian to try to even out the books a little more, because I think a lot of the donations are coming from my older neighbors. Some of them are not as relevant to the younger readers who are borrowing, who might want to read more newer releases or just books that are more aimed at young kids, but not really little kids. So I've been trying to add in some YA and newer releases that might appeal to, people in their 20s, teenagers, preteens, that kind of demographic, I am not necessarily out on the street that often when people are looking through the Little Free Library, so it hasn't really started many conversations about books, which I would enjoy, but maybe that's on me. Maybe I just need to, spend more time cutting the lawn, tending to the few plants we have out front. That also could just be a result of the area I live in. I wouldn't say that people are that talkative or outgoing or super friendly with their neighbors around here, unfortunately. So yeah, I think that's the one thing that has been a bit disappointing, is that I was kind of hoping I would get to chat to more people about their love of reading and what books they like, and just kind of engage with my community a bit more. And it's definitely been more of a disconnected. I make sure there are books there and tidy them up, and then I get to, see the results later of people borrowing books. But it's still been a net positive for sure. And that is definitely partially my own fault for being a hermit and staying inside most of the time. So I don't know what I expected. There are more questions, but I feel like they're all coming back to the same things, the same themes that we've already touched on. So I think I'm going to leave that as part 1 and move on to part 2 of this video and go out and show you the current state of the Little Free Library, go through the books that are in there, curate what I want to put back in, and prep the books with my embossor and my Little Free Library cards and the little info cards and everything. And if we have time, make a new roof that will hopefully withstand the cycle of seasons a little bit better. You live and you learn. Let's do it. Okay, so we're outside now, and this is what the Little Free Library looks like right this second. I did not tidy up before coming outside to film. This is just what it looks like today. I actually haven't gone in and tidied anything for at least 2 weeks. So this is probably what it looks like most of the time, in between the times that I go out and kind of thin it out. So you can really see how packed it is. Many, many books in here. I actually think it'll be interesting to count how many books fit in here when it's packed this tight as I pull them out, because I don't think I've ever pulled all of the books out at once and counted them, so I'll do that. Very full, definitely being used, because I think every single book in here right now is not one of the books that was in here originally. Those have been taken, new ones have been dropped off, and there's quite a range of genres. I will go through and show you all of the books that were in the Little Free Library, just for curiosity's sake. But yeah, this is what it looks like. Doing pretty well. Like I said, the roof is definitely the part of the Little Free Library that has been most impacted by the weather, so you can see that it's really buckling, but again, it's done a great job of protecting the books. I have had no issues with books being damaged. The roof is just looking a little less pretty. So how I'm going to do this to make it a little easier, and so that I can speed up this footage so that this video isn't a million hours long, I'm going to put each book in the center, and if I'm going to put it in the Little Free Library either tomorrow when I restock it, or in the next couple restocks, I'm going to just pull it down towards myself. If I want to read it before I put it in the Little Free Library, but I do plan on putting it in eventually, I'm going to take it off to the right. And if I don't think it really makes sense for my little free library for whatever reason, I'm going to take it off to the left, and that means I'm going to try to donate it somewhere. So future editing me is going to count how many books were in the little free library so we can kind of see what the max capacity is. So I'll have a running tally up here of how many books. So this is me from the future, and there were more books in the little free library than I expected there to be. I'm a little bit overwhelmed, to be honest. It'll be interesting for future me to count how many there were in there. There were a lot of kids' books, which is awesome. I won't put them all back out immediately, but it's nice to have a bunch of kids' books for younger ages since I don't have any in my own collection. There were a handful of books that I found interesting enough that I want to read them before I put them back out in case they never come back. Maybe, I think 12 I put aside for me to read. I have a whole basket next to me of books that I'm not going to be putting back in the library at any point. Anything that I can tell is going to be specifically Christian fiction or is promoting Christianity or any other religion, to be honest, I am discounting because I don't want that to be what my little free library is for, personally. But I do have a good pile of books that I would put back in the little free library, at least again as far as I know, because I haven't read them, so I can't guarantee. And if you noticed something that you think I would object to in the books that I indicated I would put back in the library, let me know in the comments. I did look every single one up on Goodreads and try to figure out a little bit about the content, but I also don't have enough time to do extensive deep dives or to read every single one of these books. So I'm doing my best. I do have a good pile of adult books, a good pile of kids books, and some sort of YA. But then I also have that entire bin that was donated to me that has been sitting in my living room waiting for me to sort through it. And that one I know has a lot of popular authors in it because I did take a quick gander. I know there's some Agatha Christie, there's some Stephen King. So I'm going to go through that as well. First though, I wanted to show you the books that I purchased to put in the little free library. I haven't bought too many because, like I said, I have been very lucky with donations, but I have purchased a couple over the past year that I really wanted to be able to put in the little free library. So those books are The Secret Garden. This was a childhood favorite of mine, so I really wanted to put that in there for any kids who maybe haven't read The Secret Garden yet. I thought this would be really lovely, and it does have some illustrations, which is fun. Then we have Legends and Lattes. Y'all know, if you've been around my channel for a couple of years, I talk a lot about Legends and Lattes. I love this book. I think it's so lovely, and I think my neighborhood needs to be introduced to cozy fantasy as a concept if they haven't yet. And I also, want to keep injecting some LGBTQIA plus rep into my little free library because I do live in the prairies in Canada, which are unfortunately, for me, the most conservative leaning area of my country. And not everyone here is as accepting of the LGBTQIA plus community as I would personally like as a member myself and also as a human being. So I'm just going to keep, adding my little gay books into the little free library. Speaking of gay books, we have Ray Bearer. I'm almost 100% sure that one of the main characters is asexual in this book, maybe even the protagonist, though it has been a while since I read it. But this is YA fantasy with a Black protagonist written by a Black author, and it's amazing. So, gonna put that in there. And then I have Hester. This is historical fiction, sort of a spin-off of The Scarlet Letter, and I have not read The Scarlet Letter, but I loved this book. I thought it was so, so good. So I wanted to buy a copy to put in there. I think this one could appeal to an older demographic, which might be nice. I'm trying to balance things out a little bit. And then last but not least, The Collected Regrets of Clover. I've talked about this book quite a bit too. I was sent an ARC of this exact same hardcover edition, but not this specific one because I'm keeping mine. And I loved it. It really, it explores grief. That's what it's about. And I found it very moving. And since reading this, I have lost a family member and I've been grieving this year. And it's just become more and more important to me to really offer recommendations of books that have helped me personally with processing my grief for anyone else who's going through the same thing. So I wanted to get a copy to put in the little free library so that hopefully it can find its way into the hands of someone who needs it. And then I do have two more, but technically I did not mean to buy these. Both of these came by accident, and I don't know if it was my mistake or the store I bought them from, but first we have The Maidens, which I purchased for a reading vlog, and I personally did not like this book, but a lot of people do. It's a very easy to read thriller. I imagine it would appeal to a lot of people, so I'm going to put it out there anyway, but I ended up receiving 2. And I don't think I paid for 2. I don't know what happened. Maybe I did. Maybe it's my fault. But I'm going to put that in there. I'm sure someone will like it. And then the file on H as well. I purchased this for a reading vlog that's coming. I haven't read it yet, but it sounds good. But again, I thought I ordered 1 and I received 2. So it's going to go in the Little Free Library. So that is my pile of books that I have purchased that I'm going to put in the Little Free Library. Okay, it's the next morning and I just finished sorting through all the books in the donation bin. I decided to pre-sort them and then quickly go through them with you just so it would take a little less time and so I could kind of talk about them as I go live instead of doing a time lapse. There are so many books, so I'm still going to go through it quickly, but I just wanted to be able to have more live commentary. So here we go. All the books that were donated by Anonymous Neighbor. Starting with some books that I'm going to put in the library either right away or eventually. We have some classics, some sort of pulp fiction, genre fiction, which as far as I can tell, these books don't have anything exceedingly worrisome about them. I mean, people seem pretty mixed on whether they're good or not, but, you know, different people have different taste. And as far as I can tell, they're not, you know, super objectionable or something. So these will go in the pile of books that will eventually go into the Little Free Library. They might be enjoyable for someone. So I've got those. Here I have a couple I'm not going to be putting in. Read some things that made me a little wary. I have a bunch of books that were donated that just are not, you know, I don't think they're relevant. A thesaurus that's out of date, a police officer's manual. That's a no. We have some more little, you know, a phrase book for Dutch, a little guide about stars. Actually, I mean, it might be out of date, but maybe I'll put this one in. It might be interesting for kids to read. Another phrase book. We have some nonfiction that is out of date, sort of self-help kind of stuff, and some dieting stuff, which is all a no from me. I'm pulling these down towards me, but all of these are going to be donated. We also were given 2 Bibles, so those will also be donated. I'm not going to put them in my Little Free Library, but maybe someone, you know, wants a Bible. They can have one of these for free. Joke book for kids. I just don't really want to take up room in the Little Free Library for a joke book, to be honest. I'd rather kids be reading books with actual plots. I don't know, you know, this is not really relevant. Books about pasta and chocolate. I don't know. I feel like no one's going to take those. I will just donate them. A book about karate, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, French Business Traveler, Customer's Head. I don't know. I don't know if people should be teaching themselves jujitsu. I'd be worried a kid would get this and then try following the images on their own and hurt themselves or someone else. So that's a no for me. A Spanish book and then another martial arts book. I just think I'll donate these. If someone wants them, they can enjoy them, but I'm not sure, again, that they should be taking up room in the Little Free Library. And then I have a pile of books that I'm on the fence about, so feel free to let me know in the comments if you know anything about these. I'm on the fence about every book that was donated or that was already in the library by Danielle Steele. I'm hearing very mixed messages about what kind of books she writes, and to be honest, I do not care enough to read them to find out. So let me know if you know anything about Danielle Steele. For now, I'm not going to be putting them in the Little Free Library, but I'll hold on to them in case, you know, they're sort of harmless and I can put them in eventually. For whatever reason, they're giving me weird vibes. There's also this book, which seems to have controversy around it, whether it's a true story or not, and has some pretty intense, triggering, upsetting content. So for now, I'm just going to put this in the maybe, I don't know, pile and try to find out more about it because I'm not sure. So now, even more books that I'm going to put in the Little Free Library either now or eventually. I have a bunch of books here by Sydney Sheldon, which again, from what I can tell, these books are not necessarily amazing according to reviews, but they seem to be relatively harmless. Someone also donated a book about mastering tarot and a set of tarot cards, so I thought that would be fun to keep in there in case someone wants to learn about tarot. There's also a bunch of Dean Koontz were donated. Again, I did some research. It seems, again, that the quality is maybe not incredible, but that they're pretty harmless, unobjectionable, so I will keep all these on standby to put into the Little Free Library if it's getting empty. Another kids book, this is The Wiggles. And then these 2 books, I did some research. Again, they seemed relatively unobjectionable. So And now everything else that was in that bin, I'm going to put aside to read myself before I put it in eventually, just in case someone borrows it and doesn't bring it back. Some of these I'd never heard of before, but I am intrigued. Other ones were books that were already on my TBR, so I'd love to just read them quickly while I have the book on hand. Starting here, this is a collection of short stories, and they seem like they're pretty experimental and maybe possibly absurd, which intrigues me, so that one. Some of these are classics that I've had on my TBR, so that one. We have some Agatha Christie. We got some more there. So I could do a little reading vlog if y'all are interested of some Agatha Christie. The Gift of Fear. I've had this recommended to me a couple times, and I had it borrowed from the library but didn't get to it in time, so we'll read that. A bunch of books were donated by VC Andrews, including Flowers in the Attic, which I have heard about. I've heard about this, but I've never read it. Partially because of curiosity and partially because of wanting to kind of vet the content before I put them into the little free library. I think I'm going to read at least Flowers in the Attic before I put it in. There's actually 2 copies of this last book, but I might again do a reading vlog reading all of these if that's of interest. Also, let me know in the comments if you think that these should be in the little free library or not, especially since, you know, I can't control what kids pick up. And again, I've heard some things about the content. Then we have The Godfather, which I have never read nor watched, but would be interesting to read. Like I said, there were a bunch of Stephen King, so I'm going to ideally read at least a couple of these. Sorry, cat floof. Before I put them in. Let me know if you've read any of these, your thoughts, which ones you think I should read out of this pile. And let me know if you want me to do a reading vlog where I read Stephen King books, specifically the Stephen King books that were donated to my little free library. I also, as a former horse girl, am going to peruse these 2 books before I toss them in there, just for old time's sake. I will put them in for any horse lovers to read, but, you know, for nostalgic reasons, I want to read these. And then these are ones I hadn't heard about, but I am intrigued by the descriptions and or the covers. So this one, the description sounds wild. Seems to be sci-fi, so I'm interested. These ones, Peter Straub, I think he writes horror from what I can tell, but people were saying that he writes kind of literary horror that isn't everyone's cup of tea, which usually is my cup of tea. So I've never heard of him, but I'm curious. And then this one I'm reading literally just because of the cover. Look at the cover. It's a cat merged with a weird claw hand. I don't know. I love it. I want to read it right now. And then the last couple here, this is a collection of poetry, including apparently Canadian poetry, so I'm curious to at least skim this. This one is a collection of 4 novels, including one that I've already read, which is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But there's also some other interesting stories in here, so I'm curious to kind of peruse that. Chewy, why are you doing that? You're making noise. This one looks intriguing. It's essentially a textbook, but the description sounded interesting. And then this one is apparently just a collection of essays or letters that are loosely tied to vampires from what I can tell. And a lot of people said it was very boring. But I don't know, it sounds mildly intriguing. I might not get around to it, but I'm kind of curious to at least start it and see. So those are all the books that I would like to at least try to start reading before I put them in and see if they grab me from the donations bin. I feel like that was a pretty good mix. So my next step is going to be gathering together all the books I'm going to put back into the library, emboss all of them, add the little library cards, and add the little stickers with information, at least for the books that I've read, before I put them back in. I'm only adding the stickers to the books I have read personally because otherwise it's just too much time to do enough research to be able to say what the feeling of a book is or what the content warnings are when I haven't personally read it. So I'm only adding these stickers for the books that I've purchased for the little free library that I've read. And I'm still on the fence, honestly, about adding the little library cards in all the books or just the books that I am putting in myself, that I've purchased myself. Let me know in the comments what you think. I remember last year people were kind of mixed. It seemed like a number of people thought it would be a fun idea to put the library cards in all of the books in there. But it is also kind of hard to manage because the books are changing so frequently. So let me know now that you've seen my 1-year update and how many books I've donated and how few of the books that I put in come back. What do you think? Should I put the library cards in every single book or just the ones that I'm putting in there? Because I feel like I would go through all my library cards very fast and it would become a bit of a an expense if I were to put them in every single book. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. I am embossing every single book though, again, just as a bit of a deterrent for anyone who might try to sell the books, or maybe just a little bit of a nagging thing where they have a reminder every time they open the book that it's from a little free library, so they hopefully won't keep it in their house. Who knows if that will be effective or not. I also decided to add this time just a little note, a little personal note as to why I am putting this book into the little free library, just a little note about what the book is about, or, you know, if it's a personal favorite of mine or something. I just thought that would kind of be fun to add. I also found the embosser worked a lot better on those thick first pages that you have in a hardcover. So for paperbacks, I realized if I embossed a couple pages at a time, like 2 or 3, it worked a lot better. So just a tip. Also, my husband managed to find time in his busy schedule to make a brand new roof for the little free library, and y'all, it is absolutely gorgeous. I'm obsessed with it. Here he is adding one of the final coats of waterproofing to it. He stained it this beautiful dark brown, and I'm just obsessed with it. Look how good it looks. Oh my god. So hopefully this will hold up a little better through this next winter. We shall see. Maybe I'll have to do a 2-year update for you. But at this point, I'm ready to put books back in the little free library, and I am not going to be packing it as full as it was when I emptied it out. I'm probably putting about half as many books back in, but I want it to be a little easier to see what's available, to flip through the books, to pull them out without having to, you know, take out 10 books and hold them to see what's behind them, or having to really yank to get books out. I just want them to be easily accessible, and I'm putting them in here in loose categories. I have the children's books, the picture books on the bottom shelf, and those transition into, you know, chapter books for kids, into more, you know, preteen age books, into YA, all the way into adult. And I do have some adult books on the right that are just too tall to fit on the top shelf, since it is a little smaller with that sloped roof. And then on the top shelf, it's all sort of, you know, mass market paperback adult books that are shorter and fit on that top shelf, mostly genre fiction. But I'm so happy with how this looks. It looks amazing. It's refreshed. All the books in here are embossed with my little free library embosser and organized, and I think it looks beautiful, and I'm very excited about it. So hopefully this 1-year update and little revamp, refresh of the little free library was fun to watch. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you again to Notion for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out Notion sites to make your own website. The link is in the description box. It is so ridiculously easy to make a website with Notion sites, and I'm just, honestly, you can probably tell, I'm a little giddy. I'm really happy with how this looks, and I had a lot of fun going down memory lane and thinking about what this last year has been like, and I'm still just feeling really chuffed about having my own little free library. I have to pinch myself sometimes to remember it's real. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you all so much. I extra appreciate my patrons for their support. And with that, I'm gonna get going. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you really soon in my next one. Bye, friends.